I knew too it was my sword. I knew.
When the handle melted beneath my fingers and the blade shivered
familiarly along my arm and into my past. Yes, how much is my sword? A memory you had which would have
outlived
you.
And before I had even finished saying agreed, the man
with no arm somehow already
held clenched
between his teeth the handle of a sword with a blade which swayed
like a long blade of evening grass. Just as quickly, too, he slid behind
me, and I felt a sting between
my shoulder blades, and then a fire, and a cold, and a sudden something.
Seep of hurt. And then my eyes dried up, and they also hurt.
There, blinked the man with no arms, happily showing me what was now
separate, suspended carefully
in the air.
A single
harvester
with dark orange
wings struck through with light and dapples. A bruised dark.
What is it? I wanted to know.
But his violet lashes flickered, as if now to say no. And he boxed up my 50-year sword and never said more.
And so I descended the mountain of...
Anyone paths crossing back through the forest of...
No, before finally making my way...
away from the valley.
Assault.
And only in the years to come would I realize what
he had taken.
My heart stayed just as...
black and my badness spread more easily. But
the memory
and reason behind such blackness and badness had vanished completely. Which is my...
story.
There is no more. And even if the story
teller had indeed
cut himself short,
which it seemed to Chintana he had,
he gave
no indecatation, only hunching his shoulders and
lowering his eyes with a sigh.
A sight so seeped with sadness, even when orphans
responded to it.
Chintana knew better, though.
She listened instead to her chest,
which guarded a more subtle ear, and she
acceptated the sharpened
shrill of her thumb. For even as the social worker snored now in her recliner, and the storyteller seemed to recomport himself into an even smaller stillness,
Chintana knew what the orphans
were about to ask, which somehow meant she also knew.
He too knew what they would ask and how he would answer. In fact, the only thing Chintana did not know
was how she herself would
respond.
At least get up, she tried to tell herself, but though
already on the edge of her seat, as in
the poison of a dream, she felt unable to move even
an itsy bit.
Tarf grunted then, refusing,
unable
to look away from the long
box with its angles of black, and so asking,
"Is that the sword?" And of course, all 5
windows
were open now, and the window had fallen.
Clouds split apart with falling
hail, ripped
into the room, and the 5
flames on fire,
wicks on fire,
candles of molasses,
cloves,
nutmeg, cinnamon, and ginger shook and faltered. But no one there could heed the candles
anymore, or understand them.
Shadows are hither,
note, or follow
the paths. Not even Chintana, who try as she might still could not wrench herself free. And so Tarf did as he was told,
lifting the first latch. And so Zayd did as he was told,
lifting the second latch.
And so Enidia did as she was told,
lifting the third latch. And so Sithis did as he was told,
lifting the fourth latch.
And so Mikit did as she was told,
lifting the last latch.
And then all withdrew as the storyteller
leaned forward and lifted the lid.
Hey! Tarf immediately objected. It's empty!
Yeah! Izad, Nadia,
and Sithis chorused. Mikit even giggled. The weight is missing.
But the
storyteller's lack of
surprise reminded them
as he quietly reached in to pull free the finely carved handle,
bound in fall braid and beaded with winks of pale pearl.
In fact, so mesmerized was everyone by the promise of its
mild bend, no one seemed to notice how the storyteller was already standing,
filling the room, his shoulders expanding out to the wall,
the back of his neck pressing up against the ceiling.
All of him
howling
his shadow falling not from but towards the terrified handle-light.
Whereupon
He began to swing the handle in a wide but deliberately
slow
arc as if to pass a long blade through the wicks of those 5
Candles, nearly 6 feet away, were indeed a yellow panic there.
perhaps by extraordinary coincidence, momentarily cowered into small rounds of blue and drowning smoke. How his lips gleamed sharp red then, as gripping the handle with
Both hands, he raised it high above his head, twisting his shoulders away,
never relinquishing his gaze,
fixed awfully on the orphans.
still seated at his feet.
Instinctively tossing his head, jerked their arms up in front of their faces.
United yelled sympathetically down the line.
The Mickett wailed.
Chintana forced herself bent from a chair, but she was
Too far too.
Oh, so very brave too.
Late the story.
Storyteller already swinging down and across the necks of the 5
A
orphans.
vicious and terrible round.
with even worse implications if his hands hadn't clutched.
Nothing at all.
For indeed,
At the height of their ruin,
yet before their crime,
They,
those hands,
pale as February, had been so
so seamlessly
and
so,
so expertly so,
stripped clean.
replaced with a ladle of angry air.
tripe, hogwash, baloney, and hooey.
Belinda Kite spat loudly, striding forward, the handle now
Somehow miraculously.
in her possession. How easily, too, it seemed she had just reached
Out of the shadows and plucked free from him his glacial grasp,
the end of his story.
Despite herself, Chintana was
Overjoyed, even if she also wondered what on earth could have prompted such a display of uncommon heroics. Had some protective instinct
suddenly insisted she act on behalf of the orphans, or was it just more evidence of
Belinda Kite's natural predisposition to
a
spoil.
pretty gripping moment?
Whatever the case, she now dangled.
the curious?
Handle between her 2 very nimble fingers.
It's time to cut out such doo-doo.
Look closely, my children. This is nothing but a bit of phony footy.
Whereupon Belinda Kite
To further substantiate her claim,
Proceeded to swing and to no effect.
stab, gash, cross,
flame, chop, slash, hew, pare, lop,
Perforate, puncture, slit.
pierce, sunder, and jab the hand.
hand herself all over her,
Herself and around herself, across
through, making
Showed across Chris her knees, thighs,
and waist, dice, fingers, wrists,
elbows and arms, section,
filleting and
lancing neck, jaw,
nose,
ears, and
scalp. A complete hacking and desiccating of her
body, entire, no part of her uncut, untouched or
unmitigated.
and everyone there, though
no one else would have admitted the possibility that someone else had
Seen so, or
saw so
caught a glimpse now and then of something
slippery,
biting through the air.
white and vague.
like a slow, cold fog creeping across an evening after.
A burial.
Belinda Kite sent us.
Storyteller.
Packing with his long box of black angles. And leave
He did in the aftermath of the blizzard.
Even if no one saw him.
go. The social worker had loaded the children
Into the van, only to discover it wouldn't start.
Chintana's jumper cables didn't help.
The county clerk called the tow truck.
Someone then remarked that the night felt wide and
Deserted.
without creature.
Or comparison.
Rod of wood and mud mute.
The kennel was empty. Not even a wing flinging its shady
Whisper over field.
Void of paw print,
step or even moon. In the kitchen, a caterer informed it just arriving
and very hairy school teacher that the children had left.
long ago. To which this very late,
Teller of stories.
the only one most dead of something higher,
Sighed heavily, abandoning at last his plans for animals and
Stormy nights in favor of a bowl of spaghetti. Farfalla.
a wedge of pear tart,
and eventually a deep glass of scotch, all while he cursed his
Sedan and the early freeze.
though still managing to make the caterer giggle with limericks about
Cutting the cheese.
but the caterer was wrong. The children hadn't left just yet, and as midnight,
Midnight.
midnight,
Just as midnight approached, they were
upstairs again in the storytelling room, waiting for their ride.
Revoluting against sleep, peering down at the guests clustering about outside.
In the snow on the
back patio, where, with most of the caterers
cut loose hours ago,
the skeleton crew did their best to fast uncork
bottles of sugary champagne and
Fill brim high all those platted gobblers.
somewhere someone began to sing.
none of that, thank you.
Belinda Kite snapped.
Just raise up the bubbly and choke.
It bad. Happy birthday to me, spoken will do.
The woman with topaz clamped on her ears was the first to scoop a second.
Phil, no doubt to take the edge off.
Many were very drunk, but no one was cut off
Chintana, without a glass
of anything,
To fortify herself against the biting cold, didn't know.
what to make of why everyone else,
including herself, had agreed to stand outside. Belinda Kite, because she claimed to adore the snow, had demanded her
toast take place in it. And for some reason,
Everyone obliged, though Chintana could not see many liked it, and even less liked
her focusing instead on the
champagne. The clicking of plastic on
Platted rim.
anything and everything but.
Belinda.
And then swiftly by swiftly, as the moments edged closer to midnight.
Closer ever to Belinda Kite's 50th birthday.
50th!
Chintana with whirls of
Butterflies suddenly panicking inside her.
So Sunflower Wild began to understand something she could not have prepared herself for. No matter Belinda Kite had desecrated everything that mattered to her.
Everything that had made sense. No matter, Jintana now moved through light and stream of grave.
By tints of indecent rage.
Jintana still chose not to abandon Belinda Kite.
And so as seconds,
flickered seconds.
on seconds,
From 12.
like long violet lashes,
Chintana forced herself from the promise of infliction's peace. It was, after all,
Chintana had of her. In fact, it was all Belinda Kite
had of herself.
That once ago frail embroidery her fingers had
Nimbly and tenderly.
Stitched and bled upon, finding in grassy thread the shape of
that single harvester
with dark orange,
wings,
long gone,
yet by which Chintana could now clearly find,
remembering it,
recovering it,
reminding it.
releasing it, as she had immediately remembered when.
Pravat had at last handed it over to her. For this is what hurts so much.
No deceit at all, but the reach only of
And from a longing and already parting
woman.
a reach which tonight
From this same woman.
had also saved 5 children from the murder of
Fate. And so Chintana tried hard to keep breathing, even as her thumb throbbed terribly and a solitary tear
sliced down her cheek.
Which was when clock hands across Upshur County finally
clasped limply around midnight and said goodbye. Which was when Belinda Kite caught sight of Chintana coming apart
Figuratively.
with the tear that is.
Ensnared.
Baby, your hubby was a lousy fuck.
From their window, the children were the first to see the snow splash.
Red.
Red. Red. Even before Belinda Kite
Knew what was happening before she could make sense of the
muffled screams and recoil suddenly unrounding her as she
Right on the spot, literally.
went to pieces.
Tarf,
An idea.
Make it.
Zayd and
Saw all 5
Fingers slide away and tumble to the
in
ground.
a soundless
Spray of blood.
but even as slices of joints and nails scattered apart on the frosty stone,
Followed by the slow, toppling slivers of the rest of Belinda Kite's
hand, gold bangles loose,
too,
Chintana was already
racing forward,
eradicating others to call for help.
reaching,
racing.
Oh, how she raced for her.
How she reached for her until she was reaching Belinda Kite. Grabbing her,
Holding her.
cradling her in her arms.
wrapping her up tight in her grave coat, the scarf tight around the tortured arm.
Stroking the woman's head, which she understood at any moment.
Could also fall away. And so,
Though Jantana kept calling aloud for someone,
for anyone inside